Awesome. And it looks like we are live. Hey, everybody. I am so excited to be here today with the one and only Gay Hendricks.
Awesome. And it looks like we are
Oh,
live.
no. And
Hey,
it looks like
everybody. I am
we have
so
two
excited
things
to
going
be
on at
here
the same
today
time. Hold
with.
on. All right. I don't know why it does that, but I think we're good now. So, Gay, welcome. And I am excited to talk about your new book, but I do want to mention, I know I already told you this, that The Big Leap was a big influence in my life. And I share it with many of my clients, and I tell all the people that I meet that they need to read this book. Your new book, The Genius Zone, I'm so excited for when it's available. It's on pre-order right now, right?
Yes, it
Um,
is. It'll come out June 29th.
Awesome. And I would love to just start with you're such an influence in this transformational industry, in this niche. How did you really get started down that path?
Oh, good question. Well, I think the quick answer would be there that I'm a wounded healer. I started out with a lot of problems of my own that I needed to figure out how to solve. And in the act of figuring them out, I figured out some things that work for other people too. I was originally, when I was growing up, I was born with some kind of a glandular problem that made me gain weight real fast. And I became the only fat person in a family of skinny people. And nobody could figure out why I was gaining so much weight because I was eating basically the same thing as everybody else was. Anyway, it turned out I was taken around to different medical specialists all throughout my childhood, but I never could get it handled. One year they put me on amphetamines and it jacked me up wildly. But as soon as they took me off the drugs, the weight came right back on. So anyway, I don't want to make that too long a story, but it actually lasted for 24 years until one
Wow.
day I had an amazing wake up experience. By then, I weighed 320 pounds, if you can believe it or not. I weigh about 180 now and have for a long time. I'm 6 feet tall, so 180 looks athletic on me. And so, but I used to look like a pear. And so when I was 24 years old, I weighed over 300 pounds and I smoked heavily. I smoked 2 or 3 packs of cigarettes a day. And I was in a very toxic relationship and I didn't like my job and I didn't like my car. So everything, all cylinders had a sputter in them in some way. And I went out for a walk one afternoon to clear my head after a big argument I had with my partner at the time, Linda. And I slipped on the ice and smacked down on my back on the cold hard ground. And I didn't knock myself out, but I hit hard enough. It kind of jolted me out of my normal way of seeing myself. And I had about 2 minutes of real lucidity where I could see clearly down through all these layers of myself that I had never seen before. I could feel how the layer of fat was there because I had all of these undealt with feelings inside, like things I was angry about and things I was sad about, things I was scared about. And I realized I'd been depressed all my life, but there wasn't really, I never had given it a word, and I try to rise above it and try to overeat it away, but I couldn't get away from it. And so in that 2 minutes, I just let myself feel all of those levels of myself. And I got a big surprise, which was as I did that, as I let myself feel my anger and shame and pain and despair, I got to a place where after I could feel all of them, there was this big open space that I started calling it pure consciousness, where there was this big open space that all the other stuff was in, but the open space was this gift that we all get. And so I realized as I was coming back out of the experience, I was lying there on the floor, on the ground, shivering, and suddenly I wanted a cigarette again. And suddenly I realized, oh, I still weigh 300 pounds. But I had the presence of mind, fortunately. I don't know where I got the idea, but I got the idea of making a commitment to feeling that pure consciousness all the time. And
Mm.
so that was my commitment. I said, no matter what I'm going to do in life, I'm going to do whatever I can to feel that. And so I went back home. And then, by the way, do you mind a bit of a long-winded story here? Because
No, go for
I'm
it.
just getting to a juicy part, but it's very juicy, but I don't want to overburden
We're,
if we don't have too much time.
no, we're all sitting at the edge of our seats. We want to hear all the juicy details.
Okay. Well, that commitment led to a piece of magic because a day or so later, I got a call from a friend of mine named Neil Marinello, who said the following thing. He said, "Hey, I'm coming past your house on my way to Webster Lake, New Hampshire. And would you like to go to a lecture I'm going to?" And I said, "Well, what is it?" He said, "Well, one of my old professors at Harvard, my favorite professor, has gone to India and had kind of an enlightenment experience and has come back and is telling people about it. And he's going to be talking at his father's house, which is down in Webster Lake, 30 miles past your house." And I said, "Okay." Well, it turned out to be Ram Dass, who was just back from his first trip to India. And he was fully glowing, with this whole sense of enlightenment. And he was wearing the robes, and he had all these very young people around him that were wearing robes. And uh, there was probably only about a dozen people that came to the talk, but we sat around in this circle, and man, he talked for 3 hours without any notes. And at the time, I was a teacher in a school for juvenile delinquents. And even though these kids were kind of like the ragtags of the earth, I still would prepare and go into my note with my notes under my arm for one class, 45-minute class. And so the fact that this guy could talk for 3 hours without consulting any notes just blew me away. And the stuff he was talking about was kind of the thing I had just experienced when I had fallen on the ground, which that's a piece of magic right there. But then this next thing that happened after the 3 hours, they passed around bowls of fruit and stuff like that. And after the 3 hours, I went over to him, to Ram Dass, and I said, "Look, I may never see you again. I don't know anything about yoga or all that. And I'm an English major, and so, but I just had this experience on the ice. And could you kind of scan me and tell me something I might do to further this goal I have of feeling that kind of pure consciousness?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "I would recommend doing some breathing and some meditation and some yoga postures, and that will bring out that feeling more." And I said, "Well, where would I find something like that?" And he sort of said, "Don't worry, something will come to you." Okay. And so I thought he was just kind of blowing me off because he wanted to eat his banana. But what happened was later on, the next day, I went to the grocery store. And as I was checking out, I looked to my left, and there was a kiosk of paperback books there. And one of them almost seemed to jump off the shelf at me. It said Yoga, Youth, and Reincarnation. And I picked it up, and it turned out to be a whole book about, there was one chapter on meditation with one meditation activity after another chapter on breathing with a dozen different pranayama things. And so it was exactly what I needed. And there it was within arm's reach. And so that just made a huge impression on me. And I kept thinking, what if I lived my whole life this way? And just kind of stayed open to spirit and let it be my guiding principle. And so that's what led me in. Within a year, I lost more than 100 pounds by going on a kind of a radical diet, which was I only ate foods that I felt like fed my spirit. And I only ate foods that I'd never eaten before. I theorized that everything I'd eaten before made me fat. So let me just stop eating those and start eating other things. And so I started eating these things called vegetables. I don't know if you've ever heard of them or not, but they're things like beans and carrots, and they're delicious, but I had never put them in my body much. For me, up until I was 24, lunch was a big hoagie sandwich. I lived on the East Coast at the time, a big Italian hoagie sandwich, and or a double cheeseburger with fries and a vanilla shake. Never chocolate, of course. I don't like chocolate, but anyway, that was my standard meal. And so I went on this radical diet where I started eating things like blueberries, and I would eat, instead of lunch, I mean, just having a regular lunch, I would have just one baked potato. And boy, I'll tell you, if you start eating things like that, you realize there's this whole world of incredible flavor that's there if you eat things mindfully and slowly and thoughtfully. And sometimes I would take literally a half an hour to eat a cup of blueberries, just because I was savoring each blueberry. So what happened is I became a hopeless enthusiast for the power of human beings to transform themselves. And I will go anywhere and everywhere. I'm 76 years old now, and I've been doing exactly what I'm doing right now for more than half of my life, either in seminars or in classes or on television or wherever I happen to show up. And so I'm going to continue doing it because I created a job way back 40 years ago that I would never want to retire from. And I highly recommend that everybody within my voice range right now or seeing this picture, do that as soon as possible, because I haven't worked a day in 40 years because everything I do is what I most love to do. And if there's one message I want you to get out of reading The Big Leap, it's focus your attention on what you most love to do. It's something that, wouldn't you have loved to have heard that message when you were a junior in high school or a
Yes.
junior in college?
Oh, yes. Oh,
I would
yes.
have, I would have gone
Yeah.
to that class, but there wasn't anything. In fact, I remember I very excitedly signed up for psychology class when I got to college, because I thought, okay, here human beings are going to be explained. First day, I hope you people aren't expecting this to be a class about human beings. This is a class about rats. And, he went on and on and on for about a half an hour saying all the things I was interested in were things they were not going to teach in college
Oh, no.
psychology till later, And so it wasn't really till I got to graduate school that I finally got to some of the juicy stuff, like
Yeah.
things I learned in graduate school were things like how to listen to people in a way that brings things to the surface. That's a very useful skill. We
Yeah.
could teach it to first graders. It's not that complicated. And so, kind of one of the reasons why when I was a university professor, I used to teach a class on cable TV. And none of the other professors wanted to do it. I don't know why, but I was always the first to stick up my hand every year and said, yeah, I want to teach the class on cable TV, because I taught a class on developmental psychology, which was interesting to everybody, no matter who they are, where they are. And I loved it because one of the things that really interests me is getting useful knowledge out to the most possible people. Like up until we started appearing on Oprah back 30 years ago, a good year of book sales for us was 10 or 20,000 copies. That was great. That was take a trip to Hawaii on, that was cool. And suddenly we're on Oprah and they say, hey, you're selling 10,000 books an hour. And I say, excuse me, say that number again. And so there's a big difference in the numbers over the years, but the message is still exactly the same. And the message is focus on what you love to do. Watch out for the upper limit problem. Notice when you start to get worried or start to bump into things or start to act obnoxious to people, because that's oftentimes a sign of an upper limit. And what that means is you're scared about something and don't know how to break through to that next level. In The Big Leap, I talk about several big fears, like fear of feeling fundamentally flawed or fear of outshining. But in a way, all fear is the same, because it's that catching our breath. It's that butterfly in our bellies. It's that clutch, that we need to learn how to open up to and learn from rather than shirking and shrinking away from.
Yeah, yeah. When you're talking about if we would just teach this earlier, right? I think so many of us just are taught you do these certain things, you're going to get to happiness, right? You get the grades, you go to the college, you get your nice job, you get married, have kids, have the house, and everything's going to be happy. And I remember for me, I did all that stuff. I came, I saw, I conquered, and I was like, this isn't what they said it was going to be. I'm still missing something. It feels like there's a part of me that's not really alive. And like every day was just humdrum, do it again and stuff. And so I love that the new book, The Genius Zone, and I know about like the zone of excellence, right? How we stay in the zone of excellence. But the zone of genius is where we really thrive. And so can you tell us a little bit about, I know you share it all in the book, so I don't want you to give it all away, but the negativity that happens in our life and the shift into the creativity that helps you with that zone of genius.
Yes, here's a takeaway if you want to chisel this in stone somewhere, which is
Yeah.
every problem you encounter contains the seeds of a breakthrough. In other words, something has crystallized into your life as a problem or an issue or something that's grabbing your attention. It could be a health issue. You know, you wake up some morning and you have a new pain in your body that you didn't recognize from all the other pains you felt in your body, or some part of your body doesn't work as well. I had 7 years ago, I stood up one day and something went clunk in my knee, and by golly, a little while later, a matter of months later, I find myself on an operating table getting a new titanium knee installed. So you just never know when those and there went a year of my life rehabbing all of that. So things like that are going to happen all of the time. And the key thing is what you do when you recognize what I call an upper limit problem. And let's think for the time being, just assume that all your problems are upper limit problems. They are there because there's some kind of breakthrough trying to happen. Even if, let's say, you're addicted to a substance like alcohol or drugs, and 118 times before you've come home drunk, sobered up, and apologized for it. So you've got this family tradition. And I've worked with more of those kind of family traditions than you can imagine. But there's always a family tradition that's involved with handling an addict or one or more addicts. One of my clients, for example, grew up in a family where there were two different addicts. And so learning how to kind of map your way around those kinds of childhood issues, that yours may not be as extreme as having addicted parents, but there's always something that's in the mix that we usually kind of have a storage, a long-term storage plan for. We don't know how to handle it at the time. We don't know how to handle daddy's addiction and why mommy takes him back every time. You know, we don't know how to handle that. So we put it in long-term storage, and that will work it out later. We'll unfreeze it later when the time is right. Unfortunately, the time usually isn't very right most of the time. And so we don't get around to unpacking those old things. So life has to bring them to our attention for us. And so if you've got issues of abandonment, you will create it over and over and over again. If you've got issues with approval, you'll get yourself lost in approval over and over and over again until the magic day you realize, oh, wait a minute, I keep having the same issues. And there's only a few. There's approval, there's control, there's criticism, dealing with criticism, and there's basically, do you have the right to be here? That kind of issue where you don't feel like you have the right to be here on this planet. So you go around proving over and over again that you don't have the right to be here. And negative self-esteem, that's, I guess, what you'd call that in the trade. But what it is really is a continual attempt to prove some old negative belief. And so life eventually is going to give us a big enough jolt that gives us an opportunity to challenge our beliefs and say, oh, wait a minute. Do I really need to inflict the misery of addiction on myself anymore?
Yeah.
I'm going to be playing golf this afternoon, for example, with a very dear friend of mine who has 17 or 18 years of sobriety now, and from alcohol. And he tells me about this life-changing moment, which was electrifying, which was the moment where he stepped out of victimhood and took responsibility for his addiction.
Yep.
And there was that moment where he got up there and said, hi, my name's John and I'm an alcoholic. Whoosh. You know, it was like the world changed in that moment for him. He was suddenly, one moment he was in a gray world, the next day next moment he was in a green world and a blue world. You know, it was just a whole different thing. And I've never really been addicted to a substance like that. Well, I smoked in college, but it was kind of 3 days of unpleasantness to kick cigarettes. But I've never had a major addiction. But that impressed me so much because, in a way, isn't it a template for almost every other change we need to have in life? Because for me, you might think of my 300-pound body as being addicted to foods that didn't serve me. And so I made my change on one day. But that didn't mean the cravings went away. I tell the story in the book of, in one of my books, I don't actually remember, I think it's in The Big Leap, about when I lost the first 35 pounds on my 1 year of getting my body cleaned up. I felt after the first month, I'd lost a pound a day, more than a pound a day. And I felt like a whole different person. I was down from 300 and something down to, 275 or something like that. But I felt like I had a whole different body. So then I go out, and what do? I see a family eating an ice cream, a banana split inside a Brigham's ice cream store in New England. And it's like the upscale ice cream, the really great ice cream. And they're chowing down on this banana split. And I go in there, I'm like in a trance, and I say, I want one of those, and I sit down at this table and I'm just going crazy. And for about 20 minutes, I'm in heaven. And for about the 20 minutes after I gorge myself, I'm in heaven. I was about 2 blocks down the street, though, afterwards, when I doubled over in agony. And because my body had gotten so purified over that month that it triggered my upper limit problem, the part of me that says, you don't deserve to feel this good in life. You're a fat boy. You don't deserve to feel this good. You struggle with your weight. So every time I would go down 25, 30 pounds, I would awaken something. Another time I'm down to about maybe 235 and I'm feeling like a ballerina. Even now at 180, I would look very fat. This friend of mine showed up he was very obese, and he showed up with a 5-pound box of chocolate caramels, which is kind of like my favorite thing in the world. I don't eat them anymore, but at that time in my life, a gooey chocolate caramel would pretty much take my life over. And he brought me back this 5-pound box. And just, oh my gosh, I actually had to kick him out of my house because he was such a bad influence. He wanted to stay for 3 days. Finally, I kind of pushed him and his caramels out the door, because by that time, I'd gotten so hooked on the good feeling of life itself pouring through me. I go by this feeling inside me and have for many years. It's kind of my barometer feeling, which is a flowing sense of ease and space and kind of a positive glow inside. And if I stop feeling that, I think, did I eat something that's not good for my body? Or did I say something that's not good for my body? Or one of my temptations now is to agree to do something that I don't really want to do, but I'm being a nice guy and I agree to do it. And then when the time comes to do it, I say, oh God, why did I? Don't worry, your podcast is not one of them, but
Good.
I have things like that in my life. I'm very happy to be here. It's usually something like go to a party. I went to my first party on Saturday, which turned out to be delightful. But when I used to be summoned to go to a lot of parties, my wife is much more social than I am. So I'm often called on to go and be Mr. and Mrs. Hendricks at the party. And but I like to keep my life so I'm doing at least 90% of the time what I most love to do. There's always going to be some things, like I always tell people, I'm the man who cleans the kitty litter around here, and I'm the man that puts out the trash bins on Monday morning. Just did it this morning, in fact. And so I wouldn't say I'm a genius bin meister, or a genius kitty litter meister, but there are going to be some things in life you do that maybe aren't in your genius zone, but you do them because they add to life around you.
Yeah, and there are some responsibilities that you just have to do. So what inspired you to put your words onto paper? Because you have over 40 books. I know some of them are fiction, some of them are nonfiction. What led you down the path to say, you know what, I need to put this in the book?
Yes. Well, I think I'm sort of a born writer. Um, my brother and I are very different. My brother's 8 years older, but they tell me that, and also my mother, when I was about 10 years old, became a newspaper reporter. She quit her job as a bookkeeper, accountant kind of person, and started working in a newspaper and ended up as a newspaper columnist. And that led to her being elected mayor of her little town of Leesburg, Florida, 10,000 people. Um, so, first woman mayor in the history of the town. So, I'm very proud of her. So, I learned, I don't know, it was from the time I was about 4 years old. They say I was scribbling down. I learned to write at a very early age before I went to school. And I print, I couldn't write and still can't handwrite very well. But I learned to read and write off studying carefully the newspaper headlines that my mother was reading. And I would say, what is that word? And I remember the first one I got, it was during the Korean War. I thought it was raw, RAW, but I realized I was looking at the newspaper the wrong way. And I said, what is that word? And she said, war. And I said, oh, war. From then on, I could kind of figure out how words worked. And so anyway, that I was a writer, I guess, by the time I was an early teenager for sure, because I have notebooks that go back to there. I don't know what it is about it, but I just love the act of writing. I get up every morning very early. I don't have an alarm clock or anything, but I wake up around 4:30 or so, and from usually around 5:30 to maybe 7:30 or 8, you can find me writing. Right now, I'm in the middle of a new mystery novel. I've created a new mystery character. I've created
Fun.
two mystery series, but I'm now about to launch a third mystery series, and I'm
That's
also
great.
in the run up to the Genius Zone publication, which is always so exciting because it's kind of like the beginning of a horse race, isn't it? You're a writer, and
Yeah, yeah,
uh, like an exciting moment, before the book comes out, and so I'm very
yeah, yeah.
turned on
What
to it, and I have a
was
lot of.
there somebody was there somebody in particular that you were wanting to write for when you put the Genius Zone together?
The Big Leap and the sequel, The Genius Zone, are all written as if I'm talking to one person in my office.
Mhm.
Some writers write big, they're kind of addressing the multitudes, and
Yeah.
my goal is to have a quiet conversation with you where we're walking along and nobody else could hear us, that you and I are talking about a very important subject. And so the new book, The Genius Zone, is pretty much almost a transcript of how you would be in my office and how I would talk to you and the things I would say to you and the things I would do with you if I had a few hours of your time.
Mhm.
And so I just walk people through that process in the book. So my dream person is an interested person who's keen on learning life hacks, better ways to go through life, better ways to go from moment to moment. Like uh, something you said a little while ago, you were mentioning a magic wake up moment of your own. And there was this moment for me also. Oh, you had mentioned kind of going to the end, doing all the good girl stuff you were supposed to do.
Yep.
Well, I got my PhD from Stanford in record time. I was the fastest person to go through the program. And so I got through the program in 2.5 years. And I kind of got the juiciest job out of graduate school. I took over for my major professor. And so I went from being a PhD student to teaching for my professor for a year, and being a Stanford professor for a year, and then I got a job at the University of Colorado as a professor. So anyway, juicy, 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 doing exactly doing it faster and better, and yeah. um,
Yeah.
and then a week before I was supposed to teach my first class at the University of Colorado, I was supposed to now become a professor of counseling psychology, paid $13,000 a year, my first assistant professor job, 1974. $13,000 and glad to get it, after being a starving grad student for years. And so I I think I had a bit of an anxiety attack because I was walking around in the forest outside this cabin I had rented, and I had a cup of coffee. It was in the morning, and I was walking around out in the forest, just kind of being, and it was a quiet, beautiful forest day. And in this moment, I realized that I was really worried. And what was I worried about? And I was really worried that I didn't know anything. And what I meant by that was I knew everything. I knew all the theories, and I knew all, and I'd had umpteen dozen different clients and internships and everything like that. But there was nothing I knew down deep in my soul that was about how to transform. And then I realized I already knew it. It was all encased in that moment I was talking about of falling on the ice, that it's a quest. Everybody's on a quest to open up that pure, spacious part of ourselves. And then I kind of asked this other question about, okay, then what else? What else? If there's one other thing that we need to know about how to transform ourselves, what is it? And I got the most amazing answer to that question. I got this wave of energy that roared up through my body. It was a good feeling. It was like a whole body orgasm that it seemed to rush up through my body, and it had this piece of information in it. And the piece of information was that the one thing we're doing wrong is that we don't allow ourselves to experience what we're doing, what we're feeling, and that we hold ourselves distant from our experience. And so that the one thing we need to do is let ourselves feel what we're feeling and to love ourselves for that. That was the add-on that I hadn't gotten before. Oh, it's an act of loving yourself that transform you, not an act of censoring and trying to improve yourself. That may be one way of going at it, but another way of going at it, kind of an instant way, is to go to the source of whatever the trouble is and open up and love it as it is, understand it, get into a dialogue with it. And so that was another moment. That was another magic moment. That actually led to the writing of my book, Learning to Love Yourself, because I described that moment in loving detail. And so that book came out in, I believe, 82, and was the first book I wrote after I met Katie too. So my wife of now, we're coming up on our 40th wedding anniversary. We've been together. We're in our 42nd year together, but we're going to be celebrating our 40th wedding anniversary in October of this year.
Oh, we will be celebrating our 22nd in
Oh,
September of
good.
this year. Yeah.
Oh, good. What part of the world do you live in, Vickie?
I live in Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And
So it's
I think
beginning to
for me,
warm up out there.
a little bit,
A little bit.
yeah. 72 is a nice temperature. I like it. So we've had
My
some
best
nice
friend
days.
has a cabin up in Michigan. They live out here half the year, and they just went out to their cabin in Michigan on Duck Lake. And
Oh yeah, we've been
I
there.
added
We've camped
every.
there.
Oh yeah, and well, one thing that I love about Michigan around this time of the year is that I'm a mushroom fancier, and you guys have the best morels mushrooms up in Michigan. I don't know if you're a mushroom person, but if
I
you're a
think that's the first time somebody has said the reason I like Michigan is mushrooms.
well, I haven't spent much time there, but they send me often a package of Michigan morels mushrooms, and they usually, I think, come in the month of May. So
Yeah. We have a lot of great things here. We kind of joke that there's only two seasons, and then there's construction season, because that's when they're allowed to, there's only a small window where they can actually do anything on the roads because our winters are so harsh sometimes. But
well,
yeah,
I lived in New Hampshire for 2 years, so
so you
I've
understand.
yeah, there's 9 months of winter and 3 months of construction season.
Yep,
I used to teach at a
exactly.
school in New Hampshire, and there was a big bet every year. There was this one particular tree that was in a shady place, and the bet would be, would there still be snow under that tree on graduation day?
Well, yeah, it has snowed here before in like in May. And like we never put away our winter clothes because in the summertime, especially when we used to camp more and the mornings would still be cold. So we would sometimes take our winter jackets on our camping trips. We never put those away, never put them away. The funny thing about it is the kids will wear their shorts in the winter and then wear their sweats in the summer. I don't know what's wrong with the kids.
I know. I was just thinking about that with my daughter this morning. I mean, she's big now, but when she was a kid, I would always be saying, you're going to need more clothes than that, we're going outside because we lived in coal country at the time. And then I lived in Colorado for 21 years, which is not exactly the banana belt.
Yeah, the kids just don't care as much. But so tell us, it's June the 29th that the book is officially out, but people can pre-order it right now, right? The
Oh, yes.
Genius.
And here's this cool thing that just happened. We
Yeah.
just launched the special website for the book, which is geniuszonebook.com. And if you
Yes.
go there and pre-order the book, then you can get this special guided meditation that I've done that I really highly recommend. That it's very short. It's only
Oh,
15
really?
minutes, but it has all of the key affirmations in it that I take you through that are from the Big Leap and from the new book. So you go through
Okay.
this 15-minute guided meditation. So that's all at geniuszonebook.com.
Genius Zone book. All right, I'm putting this in the comments so you guys can grab it. Geniuszonebook.com. Awesome. That sounds great. And I'm definitely going to get the freebie.
I'm going to just move
That
my
will be
computer here for
wonderful.
a second and show you what's been over my shoulder the first time. I don't know if you can see there's a gray cat sleeping against the blanket
Yes.
there. That's my girl Allie, and she is
Aw.
she was so unmoved by this presentation that she slept through the entire thing.
She fell
So
asleep. Well, that's not, everybody's been making comments and watching. I know you can't see them from the way that we're doing this, but I know everybody has been enjoying it. They were like, yes, we want the juicy long version of the story. We want all the details. So I am sure they were all very, very entertained and will be grabbing your book. So I wish you the best of luck with the book and thank you so much for being on. One last question. I'm sure you've probably had this question before, but I would love to hear your answer. When you're gone, what do you want people to say about the impact or about you while you were here?
well, my life purpose is to expand in love, creativity, and abundance every day as I inspire people to do the same. So when I'm gone, the only tribute I want is for people to continue to expand in love, creativity, and abundance. And if I had anything to do with inspiring that, God bless. That's what my life is about. And so I'm the luckiest man alive in a way because all my dreams have come true. For the last many years, I've gotten to do exactly what I most love to do, which is go around and inspire people to lead bigger lives and to create more of their dreams and to reveal more of themselves to themselves, because I know down at the bottom of everything, there's this endless source of genius that we have access to.
Yeah, I know that you've had a big effect on my life. I've heard my friends talk about your book as well. And I know that that will probably, not even probably, that will happen long, long, long for a long time afterwards, because your books will just be able to continue to teach and transform lives. So thank you so much for your contribution and for being with us today. Loved getting to know you more.
Thanks a lot. Blessings to you, Vickie.